Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We share powerful stories every week about resilience, second chances, and quiet triumphs, especially for those who have been underestimated or pushed aside. Our community celebrates strength, wisdom, and the courage to rebuild, no matter your age or background. So, if you believe in standing up, speaking out, and starting over on your own terms, you're in the right place. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part of this story resonated with you most? And if you know someone who could use a reminder of their worth today, go ahead and share this video with them. Together, we're proving it's never too late to rise. Your position has been eliminated as part of our organizational realignment. My name is Denise Ralston. At 59 years old, I had dedicated 19 years as a lead systems engineer for Cascade Aerotech, headquartered in Seattle, Washington. Nearly 2 decades of flawless integration projects, 19 years of mentoring junior engineers, 19 years of being the steady hand behind major avionics upgrades for both military and commercial clients. The words came from Chase Holloway, the company's newly appointed director of operations. He delivered the message while scrolling on his second monitor, never once making eye contact. His fingers tapped against a list of departmental costs on an Excel sheet, one that apparently defined my value. Your compensation structure no longer supports the direction our leadership is pursuing, he added, glancing up for only a second. He slid a white envelope across the desk. I didn't look inside. Through the conference room window, I could see one of our long-range UV test models taking off beyond the hangar. Unit 73C, a design I had personally led from concept to prototype. Katrina Morales was piloting today. I had trained her myself just 2 years ago. Anything else? I asked, keeping my tone controlled. Chase shook his head and returned to his screen. HR will finalize the exit steps. They're expecting you downstairs. I stood, brushed imaginary lint from my navy blazer, and made my way to the door. 19 years dismissed in under 4 minutes. No question about who would assume my mentoring responsibilities. No acknowledgement of the interns I had guided into full-time careers. No mention of the proposal I had submitted just last week that could have cut operating costs by 12%. Denise, he called as I reached for the door handle, "We'll need your badge and laptop returned before you leave." Without replying, I stepped out where Karen from HR waited with a corporate-issued tablet and a deliberately blank expression. As we walked toward the elevators, my phone buzzed. A message from Neil Brooks, a junior engineer I had coached since his internship. Is this real? Word spreads fast in a company full of engineers. I slipped the phone back in my pocket and followed Karen down the corridor to the handoff room where I turned in my credentials and access card. Inside the locker area, I changed into jeans and a windbreaker. As always, I folded my blazer with exact precision, a carryover from my Navy days. Placing my company ID on top, I paused when I spotted an old print photo taped to my locker door. My first project team at Cascade gathered in front of our prototype radar installation. Most of them had since moved into leadership roles across the industry. None of them knew their mentor had just been quietly dismissed. I started in avionics at age 21, saving up for night courses while working full-time at an electronics repair shop. By 26, I had earned my engineering degree and started designing flight systems for regional aircraft. Then came 11 years in the Navy, moving from diagnostics to combat operations tech. Cascade recruited me directly when I left the service. Paul Garner, the founder, had offered me a challenge I couldn't refuse: help us build a team that sets the gold standard for aviation systems. And I did. For 19 years, I trained them all. Fresh graduates, veterans adjusting to civilian roles. If you found a lead engineer here, chances are I was the one who taught them how to think under pressure and land a project on time. We created something meaningful, an engineering standard that turned Cascade Aerotech into a benchmark for reliability in the aerospace sector. That culture of discipline and care? It began eroding the day Paul Garner stepped down as CEO. That was 3 years ago. His son, Austin Garner, inherited the position and brought in analysts who valued quarterly reports over long-term stability. The initial changes came quietly. Engineering simulations were shortened. Review protocols were trimmed. Cross-team collaborations were minimized to speed up workflow efficiency. Then came Chase Holloway, Austin's hand-picked operations director. Chase had never debugged a flight system or sat through a red tag review, but he had a degree in finance and a directive to slash overhead. Warning signs began flashing. Seasoned engineers were let go and replaced with temps who barely cleared the clearance requirements. Technical documentation became inconsistent. When I voiced concern during last month's strategy sync, Chase smiled tightly and replied, "We're streamlining legacy dependencies." That's how he described dismantling the system we spent 2 decades building. As I left HR, my phone vibrated again, a message from Katrina Morales, "Come to Lab 3. I should have walked out and never looked back. Should have taken the severance and left them to their metrics. But instead, I turned toward the stairs and climbed back to the engineering floor. 9 engineers were waiting inside. Katrina, Neil, 2 of the avionics interns I mentored last year. All of them with serious faces. "Tell us it's not true," Neil said. I gave a short nod. "Effective immediately." Silence. "They framed it as structural realignment," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Nothing personal." Katrina gave a bitter laugh. "You were Cascade before Cascade had a name." "What now?" she asked. "What do you plan to do?" I hesitated. "Maybe a break. Haven't thought beyond that yet." Even I didn't believe myself. "This is wrong," Neil muttered. He was pacing now, eyes darting to the monitors showing our latest test data. "You're the cornerstone of our entire safety validation program. None of us would be here if you hadn't fought for those protocols." "It's done," I said quietly. "No need to risk your own careers. Focus on what you can still influence." Katrina folded her arms. "I have a demo tomorrow, but I could call out sick." The others nodded. I held up a hand. "Please, don't make a statement on my account. That's not what I want." Just then, my phone rang. The caller ID read Paul Garner. I stepped into the hallway to answer. "Denise," he said, voice tight with emotion. "I just heard. Austin told me it was a mutual transition. That you were ready to move on." "Not quite," I replied, glancing back through the window where the group inside was still deep in conversation. "This isn't how I built that company," he said firmly. "We never treated people like they were disposable. Especially not someone who gave it everything." "It's not your company anymore, Paul." There was a long pause. "No," he said finally, "but maybe it's time someone reminded them how it was built in the first place." "Not anymore," Paul admitted. "But I still know people. Victor Chen at Skyward Global has been searching for someone to rebuild their systems training division from the ground up. Would you be open to a conversation?" Skyward Global was growing fast, an ambitious aerospace contractor breaking into both private aviation and government contracts. They had a solid technical record and the resources to do things right. "I might be," I said. "But I just handed in my badge 20 minutes ago. I need a moment to breathe." "Fair," Paul replied. "Take the weekend. I'll set something up for Monday morning." As I ended the call, I noticed Chase Holloway pacing quickly toward Engineering Lab 3, his face red with tension. Inside, the number of engineers had doubled, easily 15 now. All focused, all wearing expressions that said something had shifted. I stood at the end of the hallway for a moment. For nearly 2 decades, I had been the constant. I'd worked through holidays, backfilled for colleagues in emergencies, stayed late reviewing specs others rushed through. I'd written protocols that prevented disasters before they could happen, mentored dozens of professionals who now ran teams of their own, and I'd been discarded with a memo and a short walk to HR. I walked back into the lab just as Chase shoved open the opposite door. "Shouldn't you all be on assignment?" he snapped. No one moved. Every face turned toward me. "I believe," I said quietly. There are concerns about the current testing and certification environment that need to be addressed. Chase narrowed his eyes. Ms. Ralston is no longer employed here. Concerns should go through standard reporting channels. You mean you? Katrina Morales asked. Her voice was steady, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. The same person who cut our redundancy checks and slashed simulation hours last quarter? Chase adjusted his blazer. Those changes were based on analytics and best practice models. They've compromised field readiness, said Neil, stepping forward. And now the person who's been staying late every week to cover those gaps is being shown the door. I raised a hand. This isn't about me. The issue is deeper. These engineers have valid technical concerns. They deserve a process that doesn't penalize them for raising flags. Chase glanced at his watch. This is highly inappropriate. You're interfering with company operations. Systems validation for the M-12 satellite batch begins in 40 minutes. The T-204 drone series enters final review today. Still, no one moved. I'm on M-12, Neil said. And I'm not comfortable signing off with incomplete review cycles. Chase's jaw clenched. You're under contract. Unless safety or compliance issues prevent that work from being executed, I cut in. Federal and state regulations are clear on that point. Chase's face darkened. Is this your idea of revenge, Denise? Stirring up trouble on your way out? I held his gaze. I'm standing by engineers asking for safe standards. That has nothing to do with revenge. The air in the room grew thick. Then, more people entered. Engineers from diagnostics. A technician from flight readiness. A test pilot in full gear. Word was spreading. Katrina leaned close. What now? No master plan, I answered honestly. Just making sure voices aren't ignored. But I could feel something in the room change. A collective stand forming, more than I ever intended. Chase stepped away, pulling out his phone. I'm calling Austin. And that's when the room fell completely silent. Is on his way down. Until then, all personnel are instructed to return to their workstations immediately, Chase announced stiffly. Or what? Asked Eric Lynn, a senior diagnostics engineer who had joined Cascade the same year I did. He stood calmly with arms crossed. Or you could face disciplinary review, Chase snapped. Including possible termination. Eric let out a dry chuckle. I've got over 25 years of spotless service and half a dozen successful product launches under my belt. You planning to explain to the shareholders why you're firing your most experienced team leads a week before the M-12 satellite demonstration? Before Chase could respond, the elevator chimed, and Austin Garner stepped out, crisp in a tailored Navy suit. At 35, he resembled his father only in jawline. He lacked Paul's technical depth and earned respect. What is this? He asked, his gaze sweeping the room. Your engineering teams have raised repeated safety concerns, I said evenly before Chase could speak. Issues that have been disregarded for months. Austin's mouth tightened. Denise, you're no longer with the company. This is not your concern. It's a concern to anyone who still believes system integrity matters, I replied. To anyone flying with equipment we help build. He looked past me toward the gathered employees. I understand you may feel loyal to Ms. Ralston, but this is not the time for theatrics. I expect you all back on schedule immediately. No one moved. This is insubordination, Austin warned. Katrina stepped forward. No, sir. This is a formal technical hold initiated by certified engineering personnel in accordance with our internal compliance code and state labor laws. Austin flushed. Fine. You have 1 hour to submit your concerns in writing to Mr. Holloway. After that, you're expected back at your posts. He turned toward the door but stopped beside me. You're playing a dangerous game, he said in a lower tone. I could have made this easier for you. This isn't about me, I answered. We both knew that wasn't the full truth. The engineers moved into the review room. Flip charts were pulled out. System logs and safety reports came up on monitors. They assembled a structured, point-by-point record of every issue they'd logged over the past 6 months, delayed component inspections, skipped redundancy trials, removed review layers, and fuel recalibration pressure that exceeded recommended tolerance levels. I stayed at the back of the room, contributing occasionally. Mostly I watched the team I had nurtured operate with quiet precision. They were calm, analytical, professional, everything I had hoped they would become. While they worked, I stepped into the hallway to make a call. Victor Chen speaking. Mr. Chen, this is Denise Ralston. Paul Garner suggested I reach out. Ms. Ralston, he said, his voice warming. Paul mentioned you. Very favorably. He also told me about Cascade's rather short-sighted move. That's a polite way to put it. I've got an idea that may interest you, he said. But first, what exactly is happening over there? Paul said something about an internal protest. I gave him a brief rundown. Interesting, he said when I finished. Not surprising, though. Listen, can you meet tomorrow instead of next week? Name the time. Perfect. Also, don't sign anything they send. No severance. No legal waivers. Can I count on that? Yes. Excellent. I'll be in touch shortly. When I returned to the operations room, something had shifted. The engineers were clustered around Katrina's workstation, their faces tense. What's going on? I asked. Neil motioned me over. We were compiling technical records to support the compliance memo, he said. Katrina found something buried in the server logs. She rotated the monitor toward me. A series of digital maintenance records scrolled down the screen, logs tied to key components in the M12 satellite array. These files were altered, she said, voice tight. Severity ratings downgraded. Inspection intervals changed. Component fatigue warnings dismissed. I scanned through the reports, feeling my stomach tighten. What started as red flags were rewritten into minor notices, sometimes hours before launch reviews. How far back does this go? For months, Katrina answered. Right after Cascade implemented the new diagnostic audit platform, the one Chase brought in to modernize our infrastructure, Neil muttered. This wasn't just budget manipulation. This was negligence, possibly criminal. We need to document this fully, I said. Already exporting a full log, Katrina confirmed. Then she looked up. But Denise, this isn't just about procedural risk anymore. This is data fraud. These reports were submitted to government contractors. Before I could respond, the door opened. Austin Garner entered with Chase Holloway and 2 security personnel. Time's up, Austin said. Chase will review the complaints. These men will escort Ms. Ralston off the premises. Katrina closed her laptop slowly and stood. We're not done. You are now, Austin replied, voice icy. Everyone is expected to resume operations immediately or face disciplinary action for dereliction of duty. I turned to him. Did you authorize the manipulated technical logs? Austin's expression didn't shift, but I caught a flicker of something. Recognition. Maybe guilt. I don't know what you're referring to. The altered diagnostics. The ones submitted with tampered indicators. Chase stepped forward quickly. Those are serious claims, unsupported and irrelevant to this meeting. We have the files, Katrina said clearly. Both the originals and the modified versions. Austin and Chase exchanged a glance. That look said everything. This meeting is concluded, Austin said, signaling to the guards. Security will remain until all engineering staff return to their designated stations. As the guards stepped closer, I noticed Neil subtly sliding Katrina's laptop into his messenger bag. Whatever was about to happen, the evidence would survive. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about me being pushed out. It was about silencing anyone who had seen too much. The guards walked me to the rear lot in silence. Just as we reached my car, my phone buzzed. Victor Chen had texted, meeting confirmed. 9 a.m. tomorrow, Skyward Global headquarters. I sat behind the wheel and called Paul Garner. It's worse than we thought, I told him. They're falsifying technical records. Paul exhaled sharply. That explains the sudden performance metrics Austin's been bragging about. Skipping checks. Manipulating outputs. The team is proof, but they're being threatened if they don't stay silent. Where are you? Parking lot. They just walked me out. Good. Stay out of that building. I'll make some calls. I pulled out of the lot, leaving Cascade behind me. For now, I drove home to a quiet house. Divorced 3 years earlier, my daughter was studying architecture at a university on the East Coast. I sat by the window, phone in hand, and waited. It didn't take long. By late afternoon, the messages started rolling in. Eric, reporting a postponed subsystem review for M12. Hardware inconsistencies. Katrina, test environment delay. Calibration errors. Neil, diagnostics put on hold. System integrity in question. One by one, Cascade engineers were citing professional discretion to delay or pause assignments, each decision grounded in safety protocol. Not a coordinated labor action which would violate contract agreements, but a series of independent judgments no manager could easily refute. By evening, Cascade's internal project dashboard reflected multiple hold statuses. Tasks frozen. Deliverables reclassified as pending. It was a quiet standstill, an unspoken consensus that no further work would proceed under compromised conditions. Then, a call came in from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Ralston? This is Lisa Brennan, Federal Compliance Officer with the Office of Aerospace Safety. I understand you have insight into potential falsification of systems data at Cascade Aerotech. I do, I said. But I'm not the only one. You should also speak with Katrina Morales. She's leading our systems integrity team. We've reached out, Brennan replied. Would you be willing to give a sworn statement? Without hesitation. The next morning, I arrived 15 minutes early at Skyward Global's Seattle headquarters. The structure was sleek and forward-thinking, its logo shimmering in chrome and cobalt glass. Victor Chen met me in the atrium himself, a rare move for a CEO. He shook my hand firmly. Glad you came, Ms. Ralston. Let's talk. Inside a glass-walled conference room, he didn't waste time. Cascade's facing a full-scale federal probe, he began. Their investors are panicking. But here's what matters. We've been positioning for a while now to absorb their talent. This moment accelerates that strategy. He passed me a folder. Inside, an executive-level employment offer. The salary exceeded anything I'd earned previously. But what stood out more was the authority he was granting. We'd like you to lead our new engineering training and standards division, Victor said. Design it your way. Safety, integrity, innovation, without compromise. I skimmed the contract. Title: Director of Engineering Programs. Full autonomy. Robust support. Victor leaned forward. We're also ready to onboard any Cascade engineers you believe in. Who do you trust? I thought of the team in Lab 3. The people who stood their ground with quiet dignity. At least 30, I said. Some of the sharpest, most principled minds I've worked with. Good, Victor smiled. We'll need them. My phone buzzed again. Katrina. Inspectors have arrived. All operations halted. Full review underway. I handed Victor the phone. Perfect timing, he said. Sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need to be ready when your competitor self-destructs. I extended my hand. I'm in. 3 weeks later, I stood inside Skyward's new Systems and Safety Innovation Center. The space held cutting-edge labs, virtual testing suites, and a collaborative work environment built around trust. We weren't just building systems. We were building something that mattered. Again. Victor had followed through on every commitment. My project blueprints were approved without delay, and my implementation timeline had full support. What do you think? He asked, surveying the newly completed facility with a satisfied nod. It matches the vision, I said. Exactly. He glanced at his watch. They should be arriving shortly. Right on cue, the front entrance slid open. Katrina Morales led the way, followed by Neil, Eric, and over 24 former Cascade engineers. They wore casual clothes but carried the unmistakable confidence of professionals who were ready to start again on their own terms. "Welcome to Skyward," I said. Katrina grinned. "Impressive setup, Director. Looks like we traded up." As they moved through the labs and test bays, taking in the scope of the new systems center, Victor leaned closer. 30 new hires in one morning, he said. "That sends a clear message." "They're the best team I've worked with," I replied. My phone buzzed. "Paul Garner. You watching the news?" he asked. "No, what's going on?" "Flip on any business channel." I gave Victor a nod, and he tapped the remote. The screen in the collaboration room flickered to life, broadcasting financial headlines. Cascade Aerotech stock had dropped 46% since the investigation was announced. Trading had just been suspended. "They forced Austin out," Paul said. "Board pressured him to resign after the audit results came in. Chase is gone too. Effective immediately." The anchor continued. Due to an exodus of engineering staff and the grounding of multiple projects, Cascade has canceled or delayed more than 340 deliverables in the past month. Industry sources say the company is now outsourcing critical work at elevated costs just to stay operational. Victor addressed the new arrivals. "Everyone, welcome to the next chapter in aerospace innovation." I thought back to Chase Holloway's words on my last day. "You're not aligned with our cost structure." He had been right. I wasn't. I was worth far more than they had imagined. And now, so was every one of the engineers standing here. 6 months later, I stood on the observation deck of Skyward's Innovation Campus, watching our newly commissioned satellite launch vehicle glide into its holding bay after a flawless test sequence. It had been assembled, calibrated, and tested entirely by our in-house team. Katrina had led the systems validation, and Neil oversaw propulsion integration. Every milestone had been met ahead of schedule. Paul joined me as the transport vehicle came to a halt. "The board reached out to me yesterday," he said. "They want me to return as CEO. Asked if I'd consider coming back to help rebuild." "Are you going to?" He chuckled. "No. That story's over. I like my quiet mornings too much." The access ramp lowered as the team exited the vehicle, high-fiving one another. Katrina spotted us above and raised her hand in a wave. "They're sending someone to speak with you," Paul added. "A new chairperson. They want you back, Denise." I didn't flinch. I had expected this. "And what will you tell them?" he asked. I watched the team below, strong, capable, thriving. "I'll tell them I'm already home." The launch vehicle was being prepped for its next test sequence. Tomorrow, I'd be back in the simulator, running a live systems drill alongside the new recruits, not because Skyward required me to, but because I had ensured hands-on training remained part of my leadership responsibilities. Some habits aren't tied to job titles. Some roles you carry with pride, regardless of rank. "You've created something incredible here," Paul said, his voice quiet. "We did," I replied, glancing toward the engineers reviewing telemetry data just beyond the glass. They had trusted me enough to leave the familiar and take a risk. That trust built this. Sunlight bounced off the curved hull of the prototype, just like it had the morning I left Cascade, watching a compromised program roll out from behind security glass. The difference now? I wasn't locked out. I was exactly where I belonged. Not dismissed. Just designing a smarter trajectory.